By midsummer, my own parents would file a lawsuit demanding $350,000 from me, and they would lose in a courtroom where half our relatives sat in stiff plastic chairs to watch it happen. I am Samantha Reed, 33, a vice president of marketing at a Boston fintech. I thought I understood family favoritism. I thought it was just a tone at holiday dinners, a look that slid past me to land on my older sister. I was wrong. It was a plan, and I was the line of credit. What they didn't know was simple. Strategy is my day job. I do not shout. I prepare. I track receipts, timestamps, and who clicked what. I build timelines that do not wobble. And when someone tries to turn my life into their mortgage, I do not panic. I document. I let facts do the heavy lifting. If you have ever been the responsible one, the one who pays because you can, the one told to be grateful, while someone else gets the bigger room and the second helping, tell me where you are watching from. You are not alone, and you are not crazy for wanting a boundary. Here is who I am before the storm. I grew up in Wellesley, Massachusetts, where lawns are trimmed and reputations are tended like prize roses. My parents are Linda and Charles. My sister is Sierra, 3 years older, the golden child since kindergarten. I took the long way. Scholarships, work study, student jobs that smelled like burnt coffee and toner. I graduated, climbed, and kept climbing until stock bonus and salary added up to the kind of compensation that lets you help when you choose, not when you are told. Here is the pattern I did not want to see. When Sierra's marriage fell apart, her boys were still little. Liam was 9, Noah was younger, all soft hair and serious eyes. Their father drifted off between hearings and responsibilities. I stepped in because I love those kids. I topped up rent more months than I can count, paid a divorce retainer in 2 clean chunks, and slid smaller transfers to my parents when a pension hiccup met a leaky roof. Looking back now, those were not exceptions. They were an operating system with my wallet hardwired in. Before we go further, plant these 3 hints because they matter later. First, a mortgage broker will accidentally copy me on a DocuSign email chain, and every subject line will read like an assumption that I am the missing co-borrower they need to close. Second, a voicemail from my mother will say the quiet part out loud in her own voice, a message she chose to leave. Third, my Ring doorbell camera, which is installed at my Seaport condo, will capture a hand sliding an unmarked envelope under my door on a weekday afternoon. None of that is dramatic. All of it is proof. Professionally, I am the woman who walks into the quarterly review with dashboards that make sense to people who hate dashboards. Personally, I am the daughter who brings a goat cheese tart to Sunday dinners because it is easier to be useful than to be seen. That blend of competence and compliance is gasoline if someone else is holding a match. Let me set the stage you need so the rest lands. Boston is home base. Seaport is where I live. A glassy strip of water and late-night food trucks. Wellesley is where my parents host traditions with linen napkins and strong opinions. Sierra has 2 boys and a talent for turning every problem into an emergency. Cousin Michelle lives nearby and sells luxury homes. She has a public Facebook and a private group chat, and she loves both. My grandparents Evelyn and Henry keep their door unlocked and their minds sharp. My closest friend Callie is in-house counsel at a tech company and speaks in filings, not feelings. Attorney Carter Nguyen is the litigator I will hire when the papers land. And Mark Davis is the mortgage broker whose casual email will tell me more than any family dinner ever has. Now, a clean correction to avoid later confusion. When I say my parents bought a house for Sierra, understand this, they got an offer accepted. The property was under contract with a down payment in escrow and a financing contingency that depended on adding me as a co-borrower. They had not closed. They could not close without me at the numbers they wanted. That detail will matter when we talk about motive. What did motive sound like before I could name it? It sounded like my mother's voice on a Tuesday, asking whether my Seaport place felt too big for one person. It sounded like my father's steady baritone reminding me that family helps family, especially when one daughter is single and the other has children. It sounded like Sierra sighing into the phone, saying she was drowning and it would be the least I could do. None of those lines is illegal. Together they form gravity. Here is the hook inside the hook. By the time they tried to spring their plan at a Sunday roast with 12 relatives as witnesses, I already had months of clean documentation, secure backups of bank transfers, and a habit of emailing myself summaries with dates and amounts spelled out in words, not digits. I was not collecting dirt. I was collecting clarity. So stay with me. In a minute, I will show you how a leather folder slid across a dining table can become a felony's cousin, how a group chat turns into a projector screen, and how a calm woman with a spreadsheet can walk into court and walk out with costs awarded. But first we have to talk about the years that trained me to say yes before I even heard the full ask. That is the sacrifice pattern, and it is the only way the betrayal makes sense. Transition coming up. We are leaving the moment of impact and stepping back into the long corridor that led there, one obligation at a time. We will rewind because none of what comes later makes sense without the slow, careful history that trained me to say yes. I grew up in Wellesley, Massachusetts, where reputations are edged as neatly as the lawns. My parents are Linda and Charles. My sister is Sierra, 3 years older, the golden child since the day someone handed out gold stars and forgot where the roll ended. I was the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who did not need reminding. As kids, our lanes were assigned without a family vote. Sierra got praise for big gestures. I got quiet nods for checking the back door and feeding the dog on time. It sounds benign until you realize how fast a lane becomes a rut. College made the division louder. I covered tuition with scholarships, work study, and side gigs that smelled like burnt coffee and old toner. My grandparents, Evelyn and Henry, slipped me textbook money when finals hit hard. Meanwhile, my parents helped fund Sierra's wedding and her honeymoon because new beginnings should be beautiful. No one said it was unfair. It was just the way things were. Looking back now, I can see the blueprint forming. Sierra's wants were family causes. My needs were personal projects I was expected to manage. After college, I moved into Boston and built a career that rewards clean execution and clean numbers. Promotions are addictive when you grow up thinking the only safe place is the top of the ladder you built yourself. I brought goat cheese tarts to Sunday dinners and fixed the Wi-Fi without being asked. I Venmo'd money for a leaky roof that never seemed to get fixed and called it helping out. It felt good to be useful. It also made me easy to use. Sierra's marriage cracked, then it broke. Her boys Liam and Noah were still little. Liam was 9, all knees and curiosity. Noah was younger, wary with strangers and soft with me. Their father drifted off between hearings and responsibilities, the way a fog rolls back over water and refuses to return. I did what decent aunts do. I showed up. The first month of rent support showed up as a single line in my banking app. The second month built a pattern. By the end of 2 years, my Excel timeline showed $28,800 in rent top-ups spread across long stretches of tight months. I wrote out the amounts in words in a notes column because I knew one day I would need to read the reality out loud without tripping. There were other lines in the ledger. A divorce retainer paid in 2 neat pieces that totaled $22,000, $6,000 for childcare to cover a school break and a string of late shifts, $12,500 funneled to my parents during a pension hiccup and the kind of roof leak that keeps getting assessed instead of fixed. A grocery run here, a sports fee there, a set of winter coats when the forecast went stubborn. Looking back now, every transfer had a story, and every story had the same moral. Samantha can handle it. I kept records because that is my nature. Email receipts lived in a folder mirrored to the cloud. Screenshots Dropboxed themselves the moment I tapped save. Bank statements downloaded monthly and sat in a secure drive alongside a simple spreadsheet with columns that said date, recipient purpose, and amount spelled out. I was not planning revenge. I was building clarity one row at a time. The emotional math kept pace with the financial math. At dinners, my mother would tilt her head and ask whether my seaport place felt too big for one person. My father would say, family helps family, especially when one daughter has children. Sierra would sigh and say she was drowning. None of that is illegal, but it carries a current. If you have been that person, you know the feel of it, the way it pulls at your ankles while you smile and nod and say, of course. I tried boundaries in small, clumsy ways. I said I could not cover a month. An emergency appeared. I said I needed to rebuild my savings after taxes. A new crisis found me by Thursday with a deadline of Friday. I said I wanted to help in ways that did not involve sending money. I got a list of needs, all of which involved sending money. Looking back now, the emergencies moved like storms that only formed over me. Cousin Michelle, the realtor, lived nearby and loved a group chat more than anyone I know. She was the queen of vague Facebook posts. She is not a villain in this story, but she is a weather vane. When Michelle's posts shifted to themes about family pulling together and remembering where we came from, I knew the wind was changing. Then came the car. In the immediate chaos of the divorce, Sierra needed a safe SUV to get the boys to school and the doctor. The bank hesitated. I co-signed in a moment I now wish I had handled differently. A Range Rover should have been a red flag. I told myself safety matters, and kids do not ride in status, they ride in seats with 5-point harnesses. I set up autopay to keep the peace, while Sierra restarted her life. Months turned into longer. My name stayed on a loan for a car I did not drive. Looking back now, that single signature became a lever I would eventually have to push back. Around then, small conversations started to reference big houses. My mother would send a Zillow link and ask what I thought about schools. My father would mention how important a yard is for boys. Sierra would dream out loud about a place with a real pantry and a mudroom. None of them said the plan out loud. They didn't have to. They knew I understood the language of expectation. I kept my own language tidy and deliberate. I sent myself monthly summaries of what I had covered written in plain English with dates spelled out and amounts in words. I saved every voicemail because Massachusetts is a two-party consent state for recordings, and I do not blur lines I may need later. I never recorded secret calls. I didn't have to. People will tell you exactly who they are when they think you will always say yes. Looking back now, I can point to 3 moments that should have woken me up sooner. First, a winter break when Sierra asked for just a little help to bridge 2 weeks of lost daycare. I said yes. 2 weeks became 4, then 6, and the request slid into the kind of silence that assumes continuity. When I asked whether she had found a cheaper option, she said, "You make more in a quarter than I make in a year." That stung. Not because it was wrong, but because it converted generosity into obligation in one sentence. Second, a night in March when my mother said, "This family has always shared. Your grandparents helped you with textbooks. We helped Sierra with her wedding. It is your turn to give back." She meant it as a draw on a joint account labeled love. It landed like an invoice. Third, a Sunday when my father said, "Your sister cannot give the boys what they need without help. You do not have dependents. That is just math." He was right about numbers. He was wrong about the equation. My life is not a balancing figure for someone else's budget. I am not innocent in the pattern. I liked being the fixer. I liked solving problems fast. It felt cleaner to wire money than to sit in feelings no one wanted to name. But there is a cost to outsourcing discomfort to your bank app. The cost is that you stop noticing when asks become assumptions and assumptions become plans. Meanwhile, my grandparents remained the quiet witnesses they have always been. Grandma Evelyn would hand me pie and also an index card with the name of an estate attorney in case my parents started pressuring them about inheritance. Grandpa Henry would pretend to need help with a ladder so we could talk eye to eye, and he could say, "You do not have to prove anything to anyone." Their house smelled like coffee and lemon oil and sanity. It was the place I remembered how boundaries feel in your body, solid, not sharp. Looking back now, I see the breadcrumb trail I was leaving for myself. The mirrored receipts, the notes written in words, not digits, the saved voicemails, the clear, simple emails to myself with subject lines like "Rent support for Sierra, December $1,200. I did not know those lines would one day sit on a courtroom exhibit list. I just knew I wanted the truth to be easy to find when the story started to wobble. The wobble turned to tilt when talk shifted from rentals to ownership. My mother's texts included school ratings and commute times. My father mentioned down payments like weather. Sierra started using the word stability the way marketers use the word innovation. It was everywhere, and it meant whatever the speaker needed it to mean. Here's where the timeline tightens. My parents found a house. They made an offer. It was accepted with a financing contingency that would only clear if I agreed to be added as a co-borrower. They moved earnest money into escrow. They didn't tell me that critical condition. They planned a Sunday roast with 12 relatives, linen napkins, and a leather folder. They were not looking for a discussion. They were organizing a reveal. I didn't know all of that yet. I only had the feeling that a decision had been made about my life in a room I was not invited to enter. When you feel that, believe yourself. When the phone calls pick up tempo and the phrases repeat, "least you can do," you have space. You are single. Believe the pattern, not the individual sentence. So I did one more simple thing. I looped in my friend Callie for coffee. She speaks in filings, not feelings, which is exactly what I needed. She said, "Keep doing what you are doing. Save every voicemail. Write out your notes. Do not argue in text. If a big ask shows up, say you will review and respond by email." Callie was not predicting the future. She was protecting me from it. That brings us back to the present tense, to the dinner table, where the leather folder is about to slide across the linen, to the moment when a family story turns into a financing plan with my name typed in. The sacrifice pattern is the reason I did not flip the table. It is also the reason I finally stopped being useful and started being clear. Next, we move to discovery, the breadcrumb. Every 60 seconds, the accidental DocuSign copy, the voicemail that says the quiet part out loud, and the sealed envelope that appears on camera under my door. Stay with me. This is where suspicion becomes certainty. The Sunday roast felt scripted before I took off my coat. Linen napkins, a pitcher of iced tea sweating onto a wooden coaster, 5 kinds of mustard lined up like trophies. 12 relatives fitted around a table that had seen every holiday since I was a kid. The air smelled like roast beef and furniture polish. My mother's smile had too many teeth. My father's jaw barely moved when he said hello. Sierra kept her eyes on her plate like if she blinked wrong, the night would shatter. Breadcrumb 1, the leather folder. It waited on the sideboard next to the salt. My father slid it toward me as if he was serving dessert. Inside, I found a co-borrower addendum, a draft auto-debit authorization, and a neat packet titled Payment Schedule, all printed with my name. The property line read, Wellesley, 3 bedrooms, a yard, offer accepted, financing contingency in place. At the bottom, a monthly estimate in plain words, roughly $7,000 for principal and interest with taxes and insurance, bringing it close to 8. The numbers were not suggestions. They were expectations. I kept my face calm because calm is leverage. What am I looking at? I asked. My mother answered like a realtor on closing day. Stability for the boys, she said. Rooms to grow. A yard for soccer. We moved earnest money into escrow. The down payment is sitting there contingent on financing. This makes the financing work. She tapped the page that had my name on it. I said, you are asking me to become a co-borrower. She smiled wider. Asking, she said, the way a magician says presto after palming the coin. You can afford it. You have space. You do not have dependence. Breadcrumb 2. The room itself, the relatives. This was not a family conversation. It was an audience. My father talked about family values. My mother mentioned school districts. Sierra whispered something about stability and then stopped talking altogether. Cousin Michelle made encouraging noises and nodded at me like we were on a talk show, and she was the supportive friend on camera too. I could feel the pressure sitting in the cushions. I did not argue. I used Callie's playbook. I will review this and send a response by email, I said, and closed the folder. My father's eyes flicked to my mother. They had expected a quick yes or a dramatic scene. I offered neither. After dinner, I carried plates into the kitchen and caught the kind of conversation you are not supposed to hear. Breadcrumb 3. My mother's voice, low and clipped. If she drags her feet, we read her email at the next gathering, she said. People need to know who refuses to help. Sierra's answer was a whisper that could not decide if it was shame or agreement. I just want the boys settled, she said. She will come around. I stood very still. Overhearing is not a strategy. It is a reminder. They were not inviting me to help. They were building a stage. The next morning, Breadcrumb 4 arrived on its own. A DocuSign email hit my inbox. Subject co-borrower consent. It copied me by accident. Mark Davis, the mortgage broker, had written to my parents 2 weeks earlier, explaining the math in clean, neutral sentences. If Samantha Reed consents to be added as a co-borrower, we can clear the financing contingency at the target amount. Without her, the debt-to-income ratio does not qualify. The chain sat there like a timeline with my name slotted in as the missing piece. I printed the thread. I saved a PDF. I forwarded the email to my attorney folder. No drama. Just preservation. Breadcrumb 5 was a voicemail, which matters in Massachusetts, a 2-party consent state for recording live calls. My mother left it after lunch. Good daughters step up when family needs stability, she said, voice smooth and practiced. You do not have a husband or children. This is the least you can do. She chose to record herself. I chose to save it. By midweek, Breadcrumb 6 slid under my condo door. My Ring doorbell camera installed at my Seaport building caught the angle of my mother's wrist and the sleeve of her coat as she bent to push an unmarked envelope across the threshold. Inside was a printed note. You have 1 week to sign the co-borrower addendum, or we will take other steps. No signature, no letterhead. A threat measured not for court, but for obedience. I took a photo of the note on my kitchen counter with the day's newspaper in frame. I uploaded the clip and the photo to my evidence folder. Breadcrumb 7 hit from the side. Cousin Michelle's Facebook post bloomed that night, public and vague. Some people forget where they came from. Family means sacrifice, not spreadsheets. The group chat lit up with hearts and clapping hands. A friend sent me screenshots before anyone could edit or delete. I added each image to the timeline. Michelle is not the villain here, but she is the weather vane and the wind had shifted. At this point, suspicion had posture, certainty needed a spine. So I called Mark Davis, the broker, and asked for clarity. I was polite. I was also direct. Mark said I received a DocuSign email by mistake. Am I correct that the financing contingency requires me to be a co-borrower to close at the current price? He hesitated for a beat too long and then did the right thing. The sellers accepted your parents' offer, he said, but the lender needs a stronger profile. We drafted a consent request. Without you, they would need to lower the loan amount or increase cash to close. So the house is under contract, I said, not purchased. Correct, he said. Under contract with financing contingent on you. The spine clicked into place. My parents had put money into escrow and built a plan with my name typed into the financing line. They had not asked me if I wanted to live in that plan. They had planned the reveal at dinner to make my no sound like a betrayal instead of a decision. Breadcrumb 8 arrived courtesy of my anchor. I met Callie for coffee and slid the leather folder across the table. She flipped through the pages the way lawyers do looking for the hinge. This payment schedule is a draft, she said. No one accessed your bank. Good. The auto debit authorization is blank. Good. The co-borrower addendum is the real ask and you will not sign it. She wrote 3 steps on a napkin. First, reply by email declining clearly and politely. Second, save everything to a secure folder. Third, expect retaliation in the form of social pressure and possibly a legal stunt. They cannot force you to pay for raising you, she said. If they try to sue for reimbursement, call Carter. I sent the email that night. Polite, clear, final. I said I would not be a co-borrower. I said I would not assume or subsidize a mortgage on a home I did not own and did not choose. I said I loved my nephews and would support them in ways that did not involve financing decisions made without me. Then I put my phone face down and made tea. The retaliation clock started within 24 hours. Group chat messages pinged in bursts. You are selfish. You are single. What else are you saving for? Sierra has children. You have Basil and a cat. The lines sounded rehearsed like someone handed out talking points. I typed nothing. I took screenshots. 2 days later, my boss forwarded an anonymous message that had landed in the company's general inbox. It accused me of abandoning family. It used words like ungrateful and unstable. It is jarring to see your private life walked into your workplace like a stranger. I walked to human resources with the email and asked them to log it. I have counsel, I said, and I am documenting. If more arrive, I want a clean trail. Calm is contagious when you speak in facts. Breadcrumb 9 showed up at my grandparents' kitchen table. I brought pie. Grandma Evelyn brought clarity. Your mother asked about early inheritance, she said, pouring coffee. We told her we make those decisions, not her deadlines. We are meeting our attorney to tighten the trust. She squeezed my hand. You are not the villain in the story she is telling. I did not cry. I exhaled the way you do when a door you thought might slam stays open. By the end of that week, suspicion had retired. Certainty had taken its desk. The plan was simple. My parents had an offer accepted on a Wellesley House contingent on my income being added. They planned a dinner reveal to apply pressure. A broker email confirmed the math. A voicemail confirmed the entitlement. A camera caught an envelope. A cousin tested the waters of public shaming. My boundary triggered a storm. And beneath all of it, the same arithmetic pulsed, Samantha can handle it. This is important. I did not take the bait. I did not argue in the group chat. I did not deliver speeches at the dinner table. I wrote one email. I saved everything. I called the people who speak in filings, not feelings. Callie lined up the next step. Carter Nishian would handle any legal stunt, and I began quietly unwinding the one remaining financial tie from the divorce chaos, the auto pay on the SUV I had co-signed back then. I turned it off with notice well in advance, documented the default timeline, and wrote down a date that would matter later. We had moved from hunch to proof. The next part is where the lights come up. The house deal. The pressure plays the emails, everything connects in one sensory overload moment where the sky is bright and the truth is brighter. Then we move calmly toward consequence. The truth did not arrive with fireworks. It stacked itself quiet and heavy until I could not pretend it was anything else. First layer, the surface truth. My parents had an offer accepted on a Wellesley House for Sierra. Earnest money sat in escrow. The deal was under contract, not closed, and the financing contingency required me to be added as a co-borrower to land the loan at their target amount. That leather folder at Sunday roast was not a discussion. It was a scripted reveal meant to secure my signature and my future monthly payments. Rooms to grow, a yard for soccer, stability, they said. Translated, Samantha will carry a mortgage she did not choose on a house she will not own. Second layer, the deeper truth. The orchestration had been underway for weeks. The DocuSign chain I received by accident spelled out the math cleanly. Without me, the debt-to-income ratio did not qualify. With me, the lender could clear the contingency. The audience at the roast was not a coincidence. It was leverage. My mother's voicemail, her voice, her choice, reduced me to a role, the single daughter with no dependents, the one for whom this would be the least she could do. The unmarked envelope slid under my door on a weekday afternoon and landed on camera. The cousin's vague Facebook post appeared on cue. None of those acts on its own was shocking. Together, they were choreography. Third layer, the oldest truth. This plan did not begin with a house. It began years ago when Sierra's needs were declared family emergencies and my boundaries were labeled inconveniences. It began when I co-signed an SUV in the shock of her divorce and kept the auto-pay running long past triage. It began when small Venmo transfers to my parents were treated as the natural order, while any attempt at limits summoned a fresh storm. Looking back now, the house was not an escalation. It was an endpoint. The pattern had finally written itself in letters big enough to read without squinting. The moment it all clicked was painfully ordinary. I left the roast with the leather folder zipped shut and stepped into evening air that smelled like cut grass. Gravel crunched under my heels. Somewhere down the block, a neighbor's radio carried a baseball announcer's voice into the blue. The sky was relentless, bright, clean, indifferent. I sat in my car and watched my breath fog the windshield for one beat, then two. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I was done arguing with the story they preferred. I would live in the one the facts supported. Facts first. Under contract, not purchased. Financing contingent on me. A broker's email confirming it. A voicemail I could legally save in Massachusetts because she chose to leave it. A Ring doorbell clip of an envelope pushed across my threshold. Screenshots of a group chat and a public post. A dining room full of witnesses who had been invited to apply pressure. I did not need anyone to misbehave further. They already had. I replayed the voicemail once, not to feel it, but to hear it clinically. Good daughters, step up. You do not have a husband or children. This is the least you can do. The phrasing was careful, almost sweet. The meaning was blunt. I am an adult with a career and a home, and yet in that sentence I was reduced to a variable to complete their equation. That is what entitlement sounds like when it is well dressed. I thought about the car loan I had co-signed back in the chaos. I thought about every rent top-up, every invoice I paid for childcare, every roof leak that always needed one more estimate. I pictured the spreadsheet I had kept without knowing why, the one with dates and amounts written out in words so I could read them aloud in a room that required precision. I had not been collecting grudges. I had been curating clarity. The sensory details snap-framed themselves. The smooth weight of the leather folder on my knees, the faint sting of Dijon on my fingers from clearing plates, the quiet thud of that envelope dropping on my condo floor, the way my grandparents' kitchen smelled like coffee and lemon oil when Grandma Evelyn said, "We make inheritance decisions, not your mother." They kept me inside my body so my brain could work. Recognition did not turn me hard. It turned me precise. I would not sign a co-borrower addendum. I would not argue in group chats where sarcasm passes for logic. I would not respond to anonymous emails at work with anything but documentation and a calm voice. I would not record calls in a two-party consent state. I did not need to. Voicemails and emails tell their own truths. A small, important correction settled in my mind and stayed there. They had not bought the house. They had an accepted offer with financing they could not obtain without me. That meant I had leverage powered by silence, not drama. If I declined in writing and stayed consistent, the deal would either adjust to a smaller loan or fall through under the contingency. Their problem returned to its rightful owners. But I did owe someone something myself. I owed myself a plan with steps I could execute cleanly. Step 1. Reply in writing, brief and clear. Step 2. Preserve everything to a secure evidence folder with timestamps and file names that would make sense to a judge and to me on no sleep. Step 3. Insulate my job by looping in human resources the minute a smear attempted to cross the lobby. Step 4. Unwind the last financial tether I had to Sierra's day-to-day, the auto-pay on the SUV, by turning it off with notice well ahead of the lender's default timeline. The responsibility for that vehicle would return to the contract where it belonged. If a repossession occurred, it would be because the account was in default under the terms of the loan, not because I staged a spectacle. If asked for the vehicle's location, I would provide it to the lender and stay out of the way. The more I mapped, the calmer I felt. Calm is not apathy, it is oxygen. It lets you see how every breadcrumb you have been dropping without meaning to becomes a trail you can walk back with counsel at your side. I called Callie from the car. No venting, just facts. Under contract, financing contingent on me, DocuSign thread, voicemail saved, envelope on camera, group chat screenshots. She listened, then said exactly what I needed. Perfect. Stay in email. Say no once. Save everything. Expect a legal stunt. If they file something ridiculous, Carter will have it for breakfast. When I hung up, I watched one more plane bank over the city and disappear behind the skyline. The sky stayed blue, like it had better things to do than take sides. That felt right. Facts do not need allies. They need daylight. Back home, I opened my laptop. Subject line, rehousing request. 2 sentences that took the oxygen out of their plan without feeding the fire. I will not be a co-borrower or assume any mortgage obligations on a property I did not select and will not own. I love my nephews and will support them in appropriate ways that do not involve financing decisions made without me. Send. Then I closed the computer and walked to the kitchen. The basil in the window was still reaching for the light. Smokey flicked his tail and settled back into his nap. Ordinary peace is not a twist. It is a baseline. You fight to get back to it. What came next needed fewer feelings and more filings. I organized evidence, hired counsel, locked every account, and put boundaries in writing. It was not revenge. It was hygiene, clean house, clean inbox, a clean line between me and the storm. First, I anchored the record, a simple index anyone could follow, loan emails showing the house was under contract and required me as a co-borrower. The roast night packet marked under contract, not purchased. My mother's voicemail transcribed word for word. Pressure from group chats. The unmarked note under my door photographed with that day's newspaper and the ring clip. A 2-year ledger of support including a divorce retainer of $22,000, childcare of $6,000, and family help of $12,500. Everything mirrored to the cloud and printed in a Redwell. Organization is armor. Then I locked doors that matter. Credit frozen at Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Passphrases rotated. 2-factor everywhere. Quiet is a strategy. I set tone at work, took the anonymous email to HR, routed future messages to legal. I declined in writing to join the financing. The lender could reduce the loan or the buyers could use their contingency. Their problem, not mine. Attorney Carter Nguyen sent a cease and desist and set rules for contact. If they escalated, we were ready for a harassment prevention order under Chapter 258E. I ended the old cosign favor the right way. 45 days notice, lender info included, and let natural consequences arrive on schedule. Grandparents updated their trust, no early disbursements under pressure. I sent one plain email: I will not co-borrow or subsidize a home I do not own. I will support the kids in non-financial ways. When the stunt lawsuit landed $350,000 for reimbursement to fund a mortgage, we moved to dismiss and won costs. The deal died under the financing contingency. No drama, just documents. Call it revenge if you like. I call it hygiene. I do not swing. I sort. I do not shout. I set conditions and let reality keep time.